Hi everyone, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are. I'm your host, Dr. Haider Shah. On behalf of Calvos, I would like to welcome all of you to this webinar. Thank you very much for joining us. Today we have another very interesting topic, and I'm really honored to welcome and introduce our distinguished guest speaker who is going to talk about the storytelling. What is the importance of storytelling in our lives? Personal or professional lives, how do they impact us and how can we learn from those stories? Really very interesting topic, and I'm sure we will learn a lot from this session as we have an expert with us in today's this session who will provide us best insights, right guidance and suggestions about all these things. So stay tuned because an amazing stuff are coming ahead in this session. So before we start, I would like to thank Kalwas for arranging such enlightenment sessions, for their support and providing us such a wonderful platform. The aim of Kalwas is to give you the opportunity to connect and interact with world-renowned speakers, academic leaders, teachers, authors, researchers, experts, professionals, and businessmen to learn from their experiences, recommendations, and suggestions, which will create an impact and will enable you to learn and develop yourself in order to grow and transform individually, as well as to contribute to the world in a positive way. As our slogan is "Come, learn, and share knowledge." So today we have an amazing person as guest, a person having wonderful experience in internationally known personality. Is a great human being. We always see him while contributing to the world in different ways. So let me just introduce him formally. His passion for effective presenting was born on a desk when he was in first grade. He was being punished for breaking a class rule. The embarrassment of being ridiculed by his classmate kept him from effectively presenting for the next 25 years. This did not change until the day his boss told him, either get better at giving presentation or we have got to let you go. That motivated him to lead with his fear. With the help of mentors he met through Toastmasters and the National Speaker Association, he discovered the skills and the tools to manage his fear, becoming an effective speaker and uncover his talent for training others to become world class presenters and business storytellers. And he continues to learn more about the craft every day. He helps experienced speakers, entrepreneurs, sales professionals confidently deliver memorable and meaningful talk of any length, even on short notice. His training and coaching programs focus on the fundamental of speaking and storytelling that enable you to develop presentations that connect with every audience, deliver them in a authentic style, and create a call to action that gets tangible results. He currently lives in a Blue Ash, Ohio with his family. He is a highly sought presentation skills coach, author, and speaker. He has trained business leaders, the sales professionals, professional speakers, and TEDx speakers on four continents to deliver talks that have been viewed over 3 million times. He is also a faculty member and coach at Stage Time University at Rooftop Leadership. Last but not the least, he's a wonderful speaker, coach, teacher, professional, and above everything, a great human being. So please help me in welcoming our guest, Mr. Michael Davis. Welcome to the Calvas platform, and thank you very much for joining us, sir.
Thank you so much, Dr. Shaw. Thank you. Very nice of you to say those things. I appreciate the chance to be with you. It's night where you are, it's morning where I am, and that's the beauty of technology.
Yes, yes. Thank you very much, and it's really pleasure to have you. So let's just start our session with the first thing, that stories help us understand others and ourselves. Stories serve so many purposes in our lives, and indeed, stories are about so much more than just reading and listening.
Yes.
They are instrumental in cognitive, social, emotional development. So that brings me to my first question, which is very basic and comprised of two parts. The first part is what is story and storytelling, and second part of it is what is the role of storytelling in our lives. Yes, sir, please.
Story and storytelling is the most fundamental human communication tool we have. Just recently, I've been studying this topic, Dr. Shaw, for at least 15 years. Just a couple of months ago, I read that some sociologists now believe that it was our first communication tool. When our ancestors lived in small packs of 50 to 100 people, every time they met someone or some other people from another tribe, that was a potentially life-threatening situation. So how could they determine quickly, is this a friend or a foe? Well, they believe, the sociologists believe, that our ancestors got together, they sat down with these strange people, and they shared stories. They told stories of who are your friends, who are your family, who are your foes, who are your allies. And through story, they determine, okay, we can get along, or maybe we shouldn't be together. Now, again, a lot of conjecture, but it makes a lot of sense. So story is a way that was literally a survival tool early on. And as we evolved as human beings, we learned to use stories to go deeper, to make connections emotionally. And I believe the purpose of story is to create an emotional bond with the listener. And some people do that very well, other people struggle. Here in the United States, the storytelling is a very popular subject in business today. I'm finding a lot of people struggle with it because you don't just tell a bunch of facts and have a story that's effective, especially in business. But the purpose, I believe, is to link people. I mean, look what's happened the last 2 years with COVID. Technology allows us to speak to cultures we've never been exposed to in some cases. Well, how do we connect with people of other cultures? We tell stories that involve emotional connection, that show underneath of our skin and our culture, we're the same.
Very nice.
That's
Yes.
really why we tell them.
Yeah. So wonderful. Thank you very much. What a start you have given to this session. Really wonderful answer to that. Second thing, sir, is I came across one statement that is, if you want to do something great for your child or student, explore the ways you can begin to co-create stories with them. Please enlighten us. How does story influence our lives in that perspective that we create impact on somebody's lives? Yes, please.
I think it's two ways to answer that. Number one, when I share my story with you or your viewers about how, as a little boy, 6 years old, I was humiliated in front of my class, and that kept me from a lot of activities I wanted to be involved in, because when I was young, I knew there would be people out there looking at me, and I didn't want to recreate that humiliation. Well, I've connected with you because every human being has been humiliated. Most of us when we were children, and we know that fear of humiliation. So you understand me better, and I understand you better because we've connected there. Then when I hear your story, it could have been a failure, it could have been a success. I learn from that also. I might learn how to avoid being humiliated or putting myself in a bad situation, or I might learn how to succeed faster. It's a way we can shorten learning time. Now we have to be willing to listen to one another. And I don't want to go off on a tangent, but one of the big issues in the United States today politically is really the opposite ends are not listening to one another. And if they would just stop for a moment and just slow down and say, hey, this is another person. I may not agree with that individual, but I can respect their point of view. So we're seeing both ends of it right now, and it's pretty bad here politically.
Yeah, very rightly said, sir. And that brings me to another very interesting question that mostly we say that literacy begins with the story others tell us or we tell others.
Mm-hmm.
So, why is the storytelling important for learning? How do you read and write? Yes, please.
I'm not a brain scientist, but I've read a lot of research in the last 10 years about how we learn. And scientists will put subjects, hook them up to MRI machines to their brains. And what they find is, with a sensory rich, detailed story, the brain lights up all over. And when we're looking at just facts and figures, it limits how much of the brain is involved in that process. So by telling stories and engaging the whole brain, we take that information in, that perspective, we feel the emotion, and it's, again, not a brain scientist, but it gets locked into our short-term memory and eventually long-term memory because we engage the emotions to convey the facts and figures, which most people don't do well remembering long-term. So it's a great tool to help ideas stick in the mind.
Yes, very nicely said. And that's the wonderful thing you have highlighted. It struck the idea. And really, there's a popular quotation of Albert Einstein that imagination is more important than knowledge. And this is how we say. So, sir, please enlighten us, why is storytelling important for students from learning point of view? Stories help us remember and imagine. So what's next? Yes, please.
Well, I'm not sure about Pakistan. I can tell you in the United States that we have an antiquated way of teaching information. It's very fact based, it's number based in many cases. And I think it makes it harder on kids to do that. Stories bring facts and figures to life. So I can talk about a certain date in American history and try to have kids remember those dates and numbers, or I can tell a story about what happened and they'll be able to recall that information. You think about your favorite myths, stories, books, and movies. What makes them so memorable? There are specific moments that engaged your emotions that made the rest of the story memorable. So I think storytelling should be mandatory in teaching at all levels. I mean, little kids have great imaginations. We need to encourage them to use that to learn, and not just to learn facts and figures, but to learn how to be creative.
Yes, wonderful. That's the wonderful thing. We need to teach them how to be more creative, because the world is now looking for the creative people to do things in a creative way so that they can contribute in a wonderful way. If we come to the narrow it down to the academic goals, we used to say that stories enrich lives and provide guidance to living. So, since you are the master of and you teach the people the effective methods of storytelling, and you tell the people how to start, how to have the body properly, and then how do you conclude it. So, as a trainer, as a coach, what is effective storytelling, and how do you gauge it, and how do you measure it, whether it was the effective story or not? Yes, please.
Well, as a coach, Dr. Shah, I sometimes will take my, and to use an expression, I take my coaching hat off and I put my audience hat on, and I ask myself a question. Do I remember the point of the story?
Mm,
Do I remember what the story was about?
mm,
When helping people create their stories, the first question I ask is, what do you want people to think, feel, or do differently when this story is over?
wow.
Telling a story just to tell a story, it's entertaining, and it maybe work at family gatherings. But if we want information, not information, but if we want to transfer wisdom and insights,
Mm,
we have to make it in engaging and entertaining for the audience so they remember what we said. So we have to know, what do we want them to do?
yes.
Now, anytime I give a presentation, I want people to walk away with a better appreciation of the art of public speaking and storytelling.
Mm,
Because many people have had bad experiences, like standing on a desk in first grade and getting humiliated, or they just have this fear. There is a myth about the fear of public speaking.
yes.
I've seen these lists that say that public speaking is the number one fear.
Okay.
Actually, it's not. The number
Good.
one fear is humiliation and
Mm,
embarrassment. Another top fear is being in front of a group of strangers.
Mm.
which goes back to our earliest ancestors. If you don't have any weapons or technology on you and you're meeting someone for the first time, at a subconscious level, we think that person might be a threat. So that's a fear. What is public speaking? It is the potential for humiliation in front of a group of strangers. So when you add those together, it's no wonder we're afraid to speak in public until we've been properly trained.
Yeah, very true.
Yeah.
Very true. Yes, very nicely said. And I just came to this conclusion that yes, the public speaking, we have this what you have mentioned very rightly, that it is just because of the our inheritance, that public speaking you feel fear of certain people. But very nicely you have mentioned that if you are trained properly, you are equipped with the proper way, then you can overcome this fear. And your own personal story is the real evidence of that thing, that how did you develop yourself, and now you are teaching to the world that how can you be a good presenter, good storyteller, and you have a wonderful impact on the people's life. That's, I think, the real example. We can quote it very well, that we can learn it. So indeed, really, that's wonderful. So another question is very important, that is from the perspective of a storyteller, that what important points should we keep in mind that the storyteller has to cover in order to make it a successful storytelling event. Yes, please.
Well, I think it's important to know who your audience is, who's sitting in your audience, whether it's in person or on camera, and understand why you were asked to speak.
Yes.
See,
True.
a story, one single story, can serve multiple purposes.
Mm.
However, we have to be careful. We should have one goal for each story we tell with a specific audience.
True.
If we give them too many ideas, they will be confused. They won't know what they should do, think, or feel next.
Mm.
You and I, and if you're watching this, you've sat in front of a speaker who may have been very engaging and charismatic, but you walked away thinking, what was that about? I'm confused. What am I supposed to do? Because it was too much information. So be
Yeah.
very concise about your point that you want to make, and understand from the meeting planner or the organization or university that brought you in, what do you want your attendees to walk away with? That's the starting point.
Yes, very nice, very nice. You must have an understanding of your audience first, and then you must have a appropriate goal in your mind, what you are trying to convey a message.
Yes.
Because very nicely you have mentioned that if you carry and you want to share so many information, they might not have the real idea that what was the presentation all about.
Yes.
Yes, very nicely said. As you mentioned earlier in your own talk as well, which I really loved, and you connected back to our ancestor. So usually we hear the word that we pass the memories through storytelling and we build the culture. So is it true? If it is true, why is storytelling important to indigenous culture? Yes, please.
Well, before, and again, I'm reading the research of sociologists and anthropologists. They believe that we were sharing stories long before we had written language. Some have even speculated before we were even speaking to one another. We would use storytelling through drawings. The caves in France, they estimate 32,000 years ago, ancestors were drawing on caves to convey their stories about learning lessons, passing lessons on to the next generation, telling about our history, telling how to be careful, uh, showing a stick figure with a spear holding off a saber-toothed tiger. I mean, that was teaching
Yes.
future generations how to be safe and how to survive. And it's the brain evolved that way
Yes.
to react to stories because it was a survival tool. And we can take what they used in a very crude fashion, and up to today, use it more of, actually, they were much better storytellers than we are, because we have the written word, we have technology, we can go on the internet at any time and get information. We don't have to be as good at storytelling. They survive. Not only did they survive physically, but they had to survive culturally to
Yes.
pass that down. And their memories were astounding in the ability to verbally pass story on from generation to generation. So it's in here somewhere in us today. We
Mhm.
just have to reconnect with it.
Yes, very nicely said, sir. And I really enjoy the way you are giving the answer, because you are really a great speaker to connect the two different dots, and then you answer it with a very nice way.
Oh, thank you.
That Yeah. Now let's talk about, sir, the relationship between the storytelling and leaders. Why is the storytelling so important for leaders today? Because most of the time we hear their speeches, they always give kind of short stories. They try to engage people in that way. How do you see the relationship between the leaders and storytelling? Yes, please.
I like this question. And again, I'm not sure about other parts of the world, but in the United States, I see that leaders still struggle with the paternal perspective. I'm going to tell you what to do and you do it. That's not effective leadership, because that's too punitive at times. What I think a leader can humanize him or herself by telling stories about their failures earlier in life and the
Mm.
lessons learned from those failures and how that helped that person be successful today. Our job as leaders is to shorten the learning curve for the people who work under us or that we manage, so that they can not make the mistakes, but make them faster, so and they're not as expensive from a time standpoint or an emotional standpoint. But be willing to uh, drop this armor, if you will, that I'm the leader, I'm supposed to be perfect. People don't want perfection. They want you to be human just like them and guide them through your experiences. There's no better way to do that than with a story.
Yes, very nice, very nice. And that brings me to the another question, which is really very interesting and connected to this first question. That please explain the relationship between manager and storytelling. How do managers create impact through stories? Because you train the sales professional, you train the business leaders, and you tell them how to carry out the different projects. So you would have come across multiple managers. So how do you see they create impact through useful stories? Yes, please.
Well, first is to be a good listener.
Wow.
One of the most important lessons I've learned, Dr. Shah, is as a speaker, I have to be a really good listener to my audience.
Ah,
This is true in sales, it's true in management, it's true when we're standing in front of a camera or an in-person audience. Is we have to understand what their perspective is. What are their
mm,
hopes? What are their challenges? Especially when you hear the challenges as a manager, that's the time that you can share a story, either a personal experience that you had similar to the person you're helping with the challenge, or tell the story of someone else that you managed who had that same challenge and
yes,
how that person overcame it.
yeah,
There's this concept in storytelling many people are familiar with called the hero's journey.
yes,
That's the hero. That's the idea behind the person who is a flawed human being who's living his or her everyday life. And
mm,
this person encounters a situation which pushes them out of the ordinary life. And
mm,
that person doesn't know how to solve the problem so they can get back to the ordinary life. And they're
yes,
in that zone of discomfort.
mm,
At some point, the frustration to try to solve this gets so much, they look for outside help and enter the guide. Some
mm,
people call it the mentor, the wise person, the guru, the sage, whatever. I call it the guide. Well, the guide provides the wisdom. The hero now has the new knowledge and begins to implement it and eventually overcomes the obstacle and succeeds. Because of that success, they live a new and better life. Well, the purpose of the guide often is to tell stories of other heroes who've gone through the similar journey, and that will help this new person overcome the problem.
Yeah. Very nice story you have quoted. Wonderful, sir. And that brings me to this wonderful concept of human development or the human capital. So, what is the role of storytelling in human development or human capital? As you train the different organizations and you are a coach, you provide guidance and how to create influence. But what is the relationship between human development and storytelling in that perspective?
I believe, as important as it is to be a good storyteller, we also have to be good story listeners.
Yeah.
Ask people, where do you come from? Why did you choose this field that you work in, or why did you choose this field at university? Uh, who was the most important or influential person in you when you were a child?
Mhm.
Who has helped you the most in your work world? Why do you do what you do? When we get people talking like that, that's where the connection comes in. We start to understand. We don't pay attention anymore to skin color, ethnic background, country of origin. That doesn't matter when we understand that you're just like me. Have the same emotions, same concerns. I tell people frequently, every
Yes.
human being I've ever met wants to live in a safe place. They
Mhm.
want the best for their children. They would like to have good health care and be able to eat healthy food.
Yes.
On top of that, yes, we can build fabulous lives, but we all have those same desires in common. And when we allow other people to share their story, we'll understand that even better.
Yeah, very nicely said. And let me connect this thing to the motivation. If we see the storytelling through motivational perspective, we used to hear this sentences that you can empower, you can encourage the personal growth, you can build the resilience in employee particularly. If it is true, what do you recommend to the organization to arrange appropriate trainers, and what needs to be considered from manager's perspective while selecting any trainer for that purpose? Any criteria for selecting the trainer? Yes, please.
I've never been asked that. I like this question. It makes me think that the first characteristic I'm looking for is someone who's willing to be authentic and tell their real story,
Mm,
not to make themselves look good,
mm,
but to show that, yes, I'm a flawed person. I've had my challenges in life, and here's how I got to where I am today. Because if we're not willing to do that, I don't think people are going to follow us, whether we're professors in a university or managers in a company or we're starting our own organizations. I don't think people are going to be willing to follow us because today, more than ever, I think we're more in tune with when people are being real with us and authentic versus that person's hiding something. I don't know what it is. And I think the most important job that we have as presenters, especially in the business world, is to give people hope. And
yes.
what I mean by that, Dr. Shah, is that the people, whenever we're presenting, are wearing masks. And I don't mean COVID mask. They're wearing an emotional mask. They're having challenges. It could be a work issue, it could be a family issue, relationship, money. We don't know because they're not going to sit in public and share all this information.
Yes.
But when we tell stories of how we overcame specific problems, be it health, financial, relationship, you're giving them hope that they can overcome those problems too.
Yeah.
And that's what we need in trainers and managers and leaders is that human authenticity that leads them through difficult times. It's easy to lead people when everything is going well,
Yeah.
right? Everybody's happy to come to work, come to school. Hey, we're doing great. It's when
Yes.
times are tough that they need us to be the most vulnerable and talk about previous times In my previous life, I was a certified financial planner. I did it for 28 years, and I went through 3 very difficult economic situations in this country. Well, I watch there's some instances going on now economically where I can see the warning signs and I know what's coming because it all goes in cycles. And I see people who are new to investing in real estate or uh, stocks. They don't have the experience. In my old job, that was my role, was to get them ready emotionally for what was coming, a downturn.
True.
Not rates of return or all that. They don't care when they feel like their money's going away. And whatever your role is, it doesn't have to be financial. When you can see problems on the horizon that other people haven't experienced, that's the most important thing you can help them with, to navigate those difficult waters and say, here's how we're going to do it.
Yes, very nice, sir. I'm really enjoying the way you are giving answer. It's so great, and really, the hope matters a lot, and we need the optimistic people in our lives, particularly our managers, our bosses. They need to give us the moral support in order to, because we, as you mentioned in your own talk, that yes, we have different problems facing in our lives, and sometimes we are not performing well. So at that time, if somebody says we have the psychological support, that matters a lot. And I believe at that time the training activities are so wonderful, the coaching activities are so wonderful, as we do the different training sessions at our institute as well.
Yeah.
So yeah, so we learn a lot, even though the trainings are being conducted for other faculty members, for other employees, but still we learn a lot, and we get motivated with so many connected stories and powerful stories. People like you would be knowing, the Les Brown, these kind of people are really have changed the people's life. And what you are doing
Yes.
is actually you are guiding the people, you are changing their lives, and you are making their lives more impactful. I think that's the wonderful job, and it gives very much inner satisfaction that you are changing somebody's life and in a positive way, and that person is actually contributing to the world, to the organization, and really making difference in people's lives. That's
Yeah.
wonderful.
Yeah, I'd
Yeah,
like to follow up on that if I could. 2 things
please,
you
please.
said. Number one, you used the word optimist, and I agree 100% with that. I'm an
Yes,
optimist by nature.
yes.
Some people confuse optimism with not looking at reality, right? We call it, here in the States, we call it having rose colored glasses. Everything's great. No, that's not what optimistic is.
Yes,
Optimistic is looking at the reality and saying, I choose to look at where we can go, and that's
yes.
good. We've got many paths we could go, but I'm going to be an optimist, and I'm going to show you what you already do well. That yes, you may have a problem, but here's how you overcome it, and you're going to, because you are able to do it.
True.
So many times, the people that we're leading, they get into a mental state where they can't see their own uh, their gifts, their benefits, and their value. They get stuck in their own heads. Our job is to say, wait, stop thinking that way.
No.
We all have problems. None of us is perfect, but here's how you're going to overcome it. We're going to do it together, and it's going to get better.
Yes.
And there is so much joy in helping people overcome their obstacles or see themselves in a better light. One of the kind of the standing jokes I have with the people that I work with is I keep this shovel on my desk all the time. My job is to dig into my clients' stories, because we don't see the value in our own stories and experiences
True.
because we lived it. It's called, in the great book I recommend to everyone, it's 25 years old and it's still relevant, is Made to Stick. Made to
Wow.
Stick is a great book. And they talk about this, that we have the curse of knowledge. I know my story so well. Dr. Shah, you know your story so well. We've all had difficult times, but we don't think it's that big of a deal because I got through it.
Mm. Very
Whereas the
nice.
rest of us can benefit immensely from your experience.
True. Very
That's why it's so important to have somebody else listen to your stories to help you find what I call the gold in your stories,
true. Yes.
because we don't see it.
Yes, very true. Very nice. And that brings me to the analogy that if you are within the frame, you are unable to spot yourself. You need somebody else who is outside the frame can actually nominate and point out what should be done in order to refine it further. And very nicely, you have mentioned the word of the natural gift you got from the God. That's the wonderful thing. I believe that we do need mentors and coach to tell us that what is our potential, what is our strength, because since we are at the place we don't know what is our caliber, our potential. So we need some experts like you who could tell us that how much we can perform, and with guidance. Guidance is very much important. In University of Malaya, we used to listen this word a lot, that you must have appropriate and right guidance in order to be a PhD. But PhD with the distinction particularly. So mostly we hear this word of the natural gift. So can you just elaborate a little bit for our audience, since most of them are the from the students and researcher perspective?
Yeah.
How can they explore their natural gifts, that they are naturally inclined to certain things and they are naturally blessed with that thing? How can they explore it? Yes, please.
Another really good question that I haven't been asked. It- My first thought on that, Dr. Shaw, is I'll take your listeners through my journey. It won't take a long time, but I had this experience when I was in first grade. I got humiliated. So for the next 25 years, anytime I had an opportunity to engage in an activity that would put me in front of audiences, I didn't do it. I have regret over that. How many great experiences have I missed out on? Well, jump ahead. I'm 31 years old. I'm sitting in my boss's office and he says, "Wow, your presentation skills are bad. And if you don't fix this, we've got to let you go." So now I had to deal with the fear of losing my job or the fear of public speaking, which I have to choose one. I've got to deal with one of these two. So I decided to choose to deal with the fear of public speaking. By doing that, that led me to Toastmasters International, which was surrounding me with people who could see in me what I couldn't see.
Mm.
They saw that I have a talent for speaking, but it was buried under this fear and this negativity and the utter, well, the fear of humiliation is what it was buried under.
Mm.
So they helped me very slowly come out of that. And it took me several years because I have a personality trait that many Americans have, and that is we think we can do it all by ourselves. That's just how America was. This myth in America that the self-made person. No, there's no such thing. But we buy into the myth. So it took me about 7 years to figure out that I needed to get mentors and coaches. See, I
True.
was in the right environment, but I still had the wrong mindset that I still have to do it myself. Well, once I got a mentor, literally 20 years ago this year, everything changed because he was highly qualified. He introduced me to other people. So it all starts, to answer your question, you've got to put yourself in an environment of support where people are willing to take the time to work with you to show you what you can't see in yourself.
Wow.
And then once you're in that, then go for the people who are the very best in that kind of environment. My mentors and coaches are world champions, Hall of Fame speakers, a longtime Las Vegas performer, and a Hollywood scriptwriting consultant.
Wow.
And I say that to you not to brag, but just to say it took me about 15 years to get in that circle of people. But I had to be willing to say, I can't do it myself. I can't see my own gold. I'm too trapped by my own negativity. And that takes a while. That's not going to happen in 48 hours. You have to be willing to be authentic and show your weaknesses and your fears to other people and trust that they have your best interests at heart. But that will put you down that better path.
Yes. Yes, sir. Very inspirational story you have. I really loved your story. and that's a very eye opener for the upcoming generation, that they can change their life while having the right mentor, and of course the positivity in them and the optimistic regarding the future. And you have very rightly mentioned that the mentors, they provide you a support and give you the environment where you can grow properly. And they say that if you are a very good seed, quality seed, but you are in the wrong soil, so you will not be able to grow properly. So you have to have you great fertile land for that purpose. And I love the way you mentioned it, that how did you learn and you were connected with the world champions. And I think that's the result that we see. What you do is so phenomenal, so fantastic. That's just the outcome. You were connected with the world. Right people are the right mentors. And can we conclude from your this talk that we must know the experts in the field, so that we can connect them, we can learn from them, we can request them to guide us?
Yes, I want to go back to something you just said, though. I took a long time to say what you brilliantly summed up in one metaphor.
Yeah.
If you're a good seed in bad soil, you're not going to grow.
Yeah.
You said it a lot better than I did. so, so
Thank you,
I'm
sir.
sorry. Could you repeat the last part of that question?
I just wanted to confirm that how you recommend to our student particularly, that since you were connected with the world-renowned speakers, the experts who were there. So my question was that our student, they should also seek the guidance from the world speakers or the champions who are in the field, so that they can contact them and they can learn from them.
Yes, a couple of ideas for you. Watch videos. YouTube is full of great videos about speakers. The way I found my first mentor is I saw him speak in 2002. His name's Darren LaCroix. He was the reigning world champion of public speaking. I immediately loved his message and his style. And I thought, I really like that. I'd like that to talk to him. So we had a conversation, and it didn't take but a couple of weeks. He agreed to be my mentor. But watch several people. Find, not that you want to be like that person, but just somebody you feel you'd have a connection with, and just have a conversation with that individual. It may not work out, but try a few. You might have to go through several people. But because of Darren, I eventually met other people who also became mentors. It only takes one person to open up the right door. On your end, you're just going to have to do the work to find and keep trying, and then you will find that right person. If you go in with the idea that I want somebody to help me, and also how can you help the mentor?
Mm. True.
I helped him in the beginning and didn't realize it until he pointed it out later.
Yeah. Yes. Very nicely said, sir. Thank you very much. And
Sure.
there is one another very interesting question from our student, that this is very informative talk. You found a good guidance and great mentors, but some people may not find that and try to become self-made person. What would you recommend to them, and how do they find guidance? Yes, please.
I hear what you're saying. It may be tough to find that person. First of all, you have to keep looking. I mean, it took me 7 years before I realized I cannot teach myself well. There's a Hall of Fame speaker named Mike Rayburn who says the problem with being self-taught is that the teacher oftentimes isn't very good, right? It's hard to teach yourself what you don't know. So maybe it won't be directly, but find the books, find the videos, find the courses that will help you down that road. And if you find a book or a course that you really like, that might lead you to the author.
Yes.
And even if that author can't directly help you, that person might recommend you to someone else within his or her circle of people. But don't give up trying to find that person. It may take a while. You might get lucky the first time. It might take you 10, 20, 30 people, but you're going to be picking up knowledge along the way with every book you read, with every course you take, with every video you watch. And the more of that knowledge you get, the more you'll trust yourself to find the right person.
True.
And I hope that answers that question.
Yeah, very well said. And there was one of our friend, and he was telling me that he was looking for a mentor, and he wrote around 300 letters to the different at that time the academic leaders, and then he got out of 300 only one letter back, and that it was mentioned that you can come and I can provide you a coaching regarding that thing. So
There you go.
yes, yeah. Now, what you said is so very similar to that thing, that you keep on searching and then you will find it. And sometimes the different books actually, you can see the authors, you can contact with them. We do realize that people are busy in their lives. Sometimes they are unable to reply on time. But you have to keep on striving to contact with them. Only then they will be able to answer you. So, and that happens. Yes, please.
Well, I love that you just said that example of 300 letters and one response.
Yes.
I just turned 59 years old a couple of weeks ago. And at this point in my life,
Mhm.
I believe the key to success above all others is absolutely just persistence.
Wow.
You just have to keep going. When I was a younger man, I lived under the illusion that you get a lucky break one time, or you take some action for a while and then you succeed and life is great. That is the
True.
biggest myth there is.
Yes.
You have to continually take action and be focused on that action. If your goal is to get a mentor, it has to be important enough of a goal to you that you're willing to write 300 letters for one response. And if
Yes.
you don't get it in 300, you write 301.
Wow.
And Dr. Shah, you and I were talking before the recording about this concept
Yes.
that successful people do not like writing 300 letters any more than you or I do.
Mm.
They don't like getting up in the morning and exercising. They don't like giving up their favorite food because of health reasons. They don't like that any more than we do, but they're willing to look past that short-term pain or sacrifice for the bigger good.
Wow. Yeah.
And
Exactly.
that it's just being willing. It has to be important enough to you, though. If it's not important, you won't keep doing it.
Yeah. Very nice. And I think you have given wonderful message to the world that you have to be persistent while achieving your goals. And another thing I loved was you said about the you remain to be focused towards your goal. That's the wonderful thing. And yeah, when we were discussing before going live, that you mentioned a wonderful phrase to me, and I learned that, and I love that, that you have to give sacrifice for short term, and then on longer term you will be able to have the wonderful achievements. Yes, the short term sacrifices need to be there in order to give you the achievements in upcoming life. That's, I think, wonderful thing.
Yeah.
The wonderful conversation is going on with you, sir, and I'm really enjoying the every answer you give, because the expert, they make things easy for the people, and you are doing it in a fantastic way since you have a wonderful experience.
Thank
So
you.
yes, please, please.
No, I just said thank you. I appreciate that. And I'm taking the wisdom others have shared with me, and I just try to pass it on so others can shorten their learning curve.
Wow, wonderful. And that's the greatness of the great people, that they, whatever they learn, they pass on to the rest of the people. And the reason behind is because we belong to the same area of teaching and education. So we believe in a philosophy that knowledge grows when shared. So what
Yes,
you are doing, yeah, so what you are doing is the same thing. Yes.
absolutely.
So yeah. So since sir, you are a wonderful expert and professional, different organizations, they approach you for different trainings and session for them. So as you have the great experience regarding the training and coaching, so please share your thoughts. What kind of problem organizations face regarding employees' demotivation, low morale, and how do you motivate them through your influence by telling them the stories and your coaching? Can you share your some of your experiences, that how do you motivate them through storytelling, particularly the employees? Yes, please.
Yes, and I'll tell you, Dr. Shaw, it's an excellent question. And here I may sound like I'm oversimplifying, but I believe that all motivation, all communication, all misunderstandings, it all boils down to miscommunication.
Mhm.
If you're married and you and your spouse are having a problem, it's a miscommunication. If you're having a problem with your kids, if a boss is having a problem with a worker, you've got demotivated workers. We haven't conveyed to our workers why they're valuable to us,
Mhm.
why their job is valuable, and the impact and the importance they have. Now, we can look at all the other reasons and take polls, and to me, it all boils down to we're not communicating effectively the value that they bring to us, so they don't feel appreciated. And that's why, and again, I'm not sure about Pakistan. Here in the United States, since COVID, a lot of people have quit their jobs
Mhm.
because they thought, well, I'm stuck at home, I'm not appreciated, so I'm just going to quit. Well, the problem they're finding is they shouldn't have quit so fast because they're going to other places that aren't communicating well either. But if we're going to be effective leaders, we have to consistently, again, not just once or twice, but consistently convey to our people, here's why you're valuable to us. Here's what you do well. Here's where you could do better. We're going to help you do better, so that it's a positive cycle.
True.
It can, I use the analogy many times, is we can have things go spiral out of control and they go downward. Well, we can also have an upward spiral.
Yeah.
And make sure that with that communication that we're consistent and we understand what their concerns are too. It's not a one-way communication. We have to listen to them. And
Wow.
that's, again, to go back to the beginning, what we talked about. Eventually, once you diagnose the problem, that's when you can bring in your stories.
Yes. Again, very nicely you have connected back to the our first talk regarding if you are a good listener, only then you can communicate very well. I think that's the wonderful thing. And let me just bring it further in the perspective of society or in perspective of the sociologists. Most of the time we hear the sociologists, they say that storytelling is the our backbone. Through storytelling, we create the values, we create the belief system, we create the culture, we create the norms and all these things. So storytelling is a very beneficial in terms of society or in terms of the sociologist as well. What's your take on that, please?
Yes, I have thought for years that a lot of the societal problems we have here in the States, there's a big issue still with Black versus white America, or just white America with other cultures and immigrants. And it's so easy for a section of the culture to point their fingers at everyone else and say, you're different than us, and we don't want anything to do with you. Okay, because that goes back to our earliest ancestors. It was a survival tool. Well, that's not true today. Just because somebody looks different doesn't mean they're going to try to take our lives or our possessions. And if we would just stop long enough to say, tell me about where you come from, what are you about, what are your hopes and dreams,
Mm.
and listen, and then tell our story. And you're going to find that most of those hopes and dreams and those goals and their fears, they're very similar. We're very interconnected.
Mm.
But if we're not willing to look past these surface prejudices and beliefs that we've bought into to see the human beings in front of us,
Mm.
we're still going to struggle. But the moment we can turn all that off and be willing to just sit down and say, hey, I'm going to listen to what you're about,
Yeah. True.
that's when we're going to start making societal change for the good.
Yes, very nice, very nice. Thank you very much. We have another very interesting question, and that is you are the right expert to ask that how does storytelling help to communicate the ideas, new ideas? Now, when we are telling the stories, it means we are talking about the past. So, how it is good for the communicating the new ideas? Yes, please.
Well, I love, and you have are your children in the background?
Yes, as there are certain noises coming from outside. I'm not sure.
Oh, it's okay. I'm
Yeah.
because I love the sound of children playing because I think it brings so much energy. That's why I ask. And I'm a dad, so yeah.
Okay.
Now, so the question about how do you link the past to the new ideas? Well, you demonstrated a really good example of this a few minutes ago when you said If you plant a good seed in bad soil, it's not going to grow. Metaphors. Metaphors are terrific storytelling devices to take an old idea that we understand concretely in our heads and share an idea that might be a little too nebulous or just not concrete enough. So always when you're trying to present a new idea that might be difficult for people to understand, ask yourself, what kind of metaphor can I create? That will help people get an understanding, and it will make it personal to them. And you don't have to mute yourself. I just mentioned it's not that loud. I just thought I love the energy of the kids behind you.
Yeah, but it was coming outside. I'm not sure from the roadside because we don't have anyone here.
Okay.
Okay, fine. Very nicely you have mentioned once again. And now let me just ask another perspective, which is very much important. That they say that the stories, they can shape your life, and they can change your life as well. This is just because we say that storytelling only affects our critical thinking or maybe our thinking patterns. Yes, please.
That makes me think that the most important story that you and I will ever tell is the story we tell ourselves. If we tell ourselves, well, I had this experience when I was a kid and I'll never be able to stand in front of a group of people and speak again, I'm never going to stand up in front of people and speak again. Or if you say that somebody told me when I was a kid, you're too dumb to do that, that's the story you're going to tell yourself until you realize that's not a true story. So it all starts with the stories that we tell ourselves are going to guide the choices we make. So as important as it is to tell stories to others and listen to theirs, be very aware of what story you're telling yourself every single day, because that will guide where you go in the future.
Wow, very nicely said, sir. Once again, thank you very much. And another question, which is very interesting in terms of organization. What is the implication of storytelling for practitioners? Sometimes the practitioner, they say, just tell me about the market, what is happening there, tell me about the product, the qualities, the attributes, etc. But what is the role of the storytelling for them? Yes, please.
Well, I like to tell stories of people who've successfully used a product or service that I'm offering. I like to introduce, here's a person who is having a problem similar to yours, Mr. Prospect. And once we understood the problem and introduced this new product or service, they started to use it, and eventually they succeeded. They overcame the problem. So it's a wonderful tool when you can tell successful client or customer stories.
Wow, very nice. And now that brings me to my last question, which is very important. And most of our students, they ask you this question: that what is your source of motivation of doing all these things? Yes, please.
And this happened just this week, I have a woman who I have worked with for 2 years off and on, and she won an award from an organization, and it had to do with communication skills. And she told me when she was a little girl, she always wanted to win an Academy Award as an actress. She never became an actress, but winning that award was her Academy Award. And it made her, I could just see in her body language and hear it in her voice how much the award meant to her. And it has inspired her to go out and help other people in her field. And she gave me credit for that. And I told her, look, I appreciate you saying that, but I can only share wisdom. You have to take action. If you didn't take the action, my wisdom didn't help. So I appreciated that she was complimentary to me, but I was so proud of her. And when I see people grow beyond what they believe they're capable of, that's reason enough for me to get up and do what I do every day.
Wow, fantastic, fantastic. And they say that if you can change one life, you are changing the whole humanity, because, and particularly in a
Yes.
positive way, because it's not about the single one person, it's about the whole community, whole society. And I believe that's wonderful message you have again given. in your talk that it's not only the wisdom, it's about the actions as well. Your job is to share your wisdom, share your expertise, the techniques, the guidance. But again, we are the people who are supposed to walk the path, and the path will be only when we are taking action. We have They say that whatever plan you do, it's not important. The important is how do you execute it, because yeah,
Yeah.
execution is the most difficult stage. And very nicely you have mentioned that it's just like a bridge. The wisdom we need from you people, the experts, and then the person who will carry on to take it to the next level. So
Yes.
again, it is the connection build. So thank you very much, sir. Wonderful session it was with you. A very informative, very learning, and I personally love the way you were answering, the way you were connecting the different dots, and you made it very easy for us. And I hope our audience, they would have learned a lot from your session. We strongly recommend you for them to follow you for future learning and guidance. Please follow him. He's a wonderful speaker, author, the teacher, the coach, the expert, and he's very generous and always ready to help the people. So we want the two things from you, sir. First, please share your details. How can our audience reach you? And then second, we ask each our guest that what is your message to the world as a teacher, trainer, learner, professional, educator, and coach? Yes,
Sure.
please.
Yeah. You can reach me at speakingcpr, that right there.com, or you can contact me, Mike at speakingcpr.com, and I'll show you a way you can get access to some of our complimentary resources. So either way, just contact me. The message I would leave with you is this, and it's a follow up to what you were just saying, Dr. Shah. When that woman told me this past week about how she felt about that award, that is an exception. Meaning, most people, when you are a presenter or a storyteller, most people are never going to tell you how your story impacted them. They may be sitting in an audience, they're wearing their mask, they don't want to even share their troubles, but something you say will impact them if you're willing to be authentic and share your story. You have to trust. You just have to trust that your message is out there impacting the world, because most people are never going to tell you, and that's okay. Be authentic, be willing to share your struggles, your strife, and your setbacks, and ultimately your success. And you and your story are going to have a positive impact on the world.
Wow, wonderful, very nice. And we definitely recommend, and we will be giving the in description of this video that how can you reach Sir Michael Davis
Sure.
for further guidance and for further help. He's always there for you people, and he is contributing to the world in a very positive way. We really admire him, and we really appreciate and encourage him. And our support is always there for you, sir. The way you are doing is a fantastic job, the great job, and the world needs people like you who are the real contributor, and that's the wonderful thing.
Yes,
So
I'd like to say the same to you too. You asked some really good, thought-provoking questions today. So keep doing what you're doing, because again, most people probably aren't telling you, but you're having a huge impact with these sessions you're doing. So well done.
yeah, thank you very much
You're
for
welcome.
your love and support as well, Sir Michael Davis. It was a nice session with you, very informative, thought provoking, and the real guidance you have given to the world. So that's all we have time for today. Thank you once again, Mr. Michael Davis. And
Thank
I
you,
would like
Dr.
to thank our audience who join us. If you have any additional question about information shared today, please email us or connect with the speaker directly through his email or the social media account, and we will be providing the different way how can you connect with the speaker. Thank you all for your support and liking our session. Stay tuned as many sessions are on the way. Please do not miss any session. Until next session, take care of yourself. Bye bye.
All right.
Bye bye.
Bye-bye.